Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. It's spooky month, which means it's time to tap into the darker impulses of our psyches and adopt the personas long left dormant to the waking world. And that means it's Mad Scientist Day! Now, unfortunately, we don't exactly have an archetype where we get to play God a la Dr. Frankenstein, so we're gonna have to pivot away from the biological monstrosities for something a bit more, financially motivated. Chemical development. After all, what do you think makes your sodas so fizzy, your laundry so clean, your plastic so... plastic-y? This opening segment is getting away from me. The point is, today we're covering a breakthrough in chemical engineering with Chemicritters. Premiering in the November 2016 core set Invasion Vengeance, this theme turned the previously inert atoms of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and many more into living, breathing animals, making them much more difficult to contain and wildly less ethical to harvest for materials. Less ethical. And while I try to figure out how that's an improvement, let's review our chemical textbooks to review what we're working with, distill the elements of their game plan, then see what kinds of catalysts we can introduce to enhance their reactions. It's time to see what kind of chemistry we have with Chemicritters. But before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what I do. Once we get to 40k, we're doing our next 5Ds video on Leo and Luna, and every sub helps. Also, check out my Discord, where there's been an unfortunate casualty in the break room, and my Twitch, where you can watch me put all my lessons to the test live with viewer duels. And if you want to go that extra mile, join my Patreon, where you can get my videos early and help us reach these video milestones. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So, what's the deal with Chemicritters? Well, this is another theme that doesn't really have a unifying type, attribute, or level. But they are all Gemini monsters, something we haven't really touched on in a video up to this point. We've covered tunes, tuners, even spirits, and I think there's a good reason for that. Strap yourselves in, folks, because we're going on a bit of a tangent about one of the most divisive groups of monsters ever printed. See, most TCGs operate on some kind of resource system. You can cast as many spells as you want in a game of Magic, but you better have the mana for it. Want to use a Pokemon's attack? Well, you need to invest enough energy in it to make it work. And if you want to digivolve a Digimon into that Mega, you better be prepared to give your opponent a hefty chunk of memory for it. But, and this may surprise you, Yu-Gi-Oh's resources work a bit differently. No player action in the game is prohibited or affected by some kind of resource you have to draw from. You don't have to tap lands to summon monsters, you can use their effects with impunity, and you can upgrade them as you see fit, as long as you have the cards to do so. Instead, Yu-Gi-Oh tends to apply restrictions on what you can and can't do if you commit to certain actions, like how Gigantic Sprite keeps you, or rather both players, from summoning anything but level, rank, or link 2 monsters for the rest of the turn after you use its effect. But a restriction that all players have to deal with no matter what is the normal summon. You only get to do one a turn, it's only free if the monster is level 4 or lower, and you have to tribute monsters for anything level 5 or higher. In contrast to the special summon, it's comparatively weak, which is why so many effects that trigger on normal summon have to be exceedingly powerful to make up for it. And so, thinking of ways to liven up the mechanics of the game, the developers decided to put in a little extra spin on the normal summon with the introduction of Gemini monsters. Now, don't be fooled by the orange border there, this is a normal monster. At least while it's on the field or in the grave. To turn them into effect monsters, a process I like to call Geminizing, you need to spend your normal summon for the turn on them while they're already face up on the field. Now, on paper, this is fairly interesting. You could use a number of effects that were meant to bolster normal monsters, made to encourage their usage instead of their generally superior effect monster counterparts, but you could turn them into effect monsters by spending a little extra resource, that being your normal summon. In practice, this was a huge flop. Their stats were nice at best and below average at worst, and many of their effects didn't make up for the turn they would generally spend being normal monsters. Heck, even if you had them come out as effect monsters by way of something like Raptinus or Blazewing Butterfly, Lucky Pied Piper wasn't going to be running over much with 1500. Same with Aquarian Elisa's random discard effect, and Neos Alias just had its name changed. And that's before we even talk about the level 5 and higher Geminis. That's right, you had to spend a turn tribute summoning for them, then wait a turn to actually make them affect monsters. These tended to be a bit better, but dealing 1,000 burn damage or attacking twice wasn't exactly setting the world on fire. That's not to say there weren't some standouts. Sometimes the right combination of other factors will turn an otherwise blasé monster into an incredible combo piece, but the ones that did make it into the big leagues did so in spite of their mechanic, not because of it, and that honor goes to Ill Blood and Gigaplant. The trick here being that both zombies and plants had a bunch of revival effects that could summon out their particular types with impunity, and using your normal summon to enable a monster that could revive a monster every turn was more than worth it. This is in contrast to Doom Shaman, a Gemini that did the exact same thing for Fiend monsters, and that didn't exactly catch on. So it turned out that the best deck that could run the ability that focused on normal summons were the ones that weren't really using it in the first place. But Chemicritters are here to give this particular sub-theme a bit of a boost. See, not a lot of their effect text specifically mentions Chemicritters, but they do mention Gemini monsters, so they can technically be splashed in with any other Gemini card to enhance their effectiveness. And to be fair, some of their effects are pretty good, once again, on paper. Chemicritter Carbo Crab is a level 2 Fire Aqua monster with 700 attack and 1400 defense, and once it gains its effect during your main phase, you can send a Gemini monster from your deck to the grave, then add a Gemini monster from your deck to your hand. Yeah, it's a Foolish Burial and a Rhoda, setting up 2 key staging areas for future plays. We've got a few Gemini support cards that are more than happy to have those types of monsters in the grave, and while you'll want to be using your normal summon to Geminize the monsters already on the field, you'll have some backups in hand just in case. And on top of that, being a level 2 Aqua monster means you have access to Totally Awesome, something the latest ban list at time of recording didn't stop. 07's in chat for our good friend Ronin Toden. So for this deck's diet, I would recommend not cutting carbos. Chemicritter Hydron Hawk is a level 3 water-winged beast monster with 1400 attack and 700 defense, and when treated as an effect monster, you can discard a card, then target a Gemini monster in your grave and special summon it in defense position. So it's a nice way to get those Geminis you sent to the grave onto the field, and you can even pitch the card you searched. How's that for combos? But the summon having to be in defense position is pretty lame. We have some big monsters with some mighty attack stats, so not being able to leverage that power immediately makes us unreasonably slow. I suppose the idea is to encourage us to use the Geminis for Xyz summoning, which is Chemicritter's only extra deck monster so far, but unless what we summon is another level 2 Gemini, you're gonna need other cards to complete the setup. And spoilers, there's only one non-Chemicritter level 2 Gemini. So ironically, in the Gemini deck, it's pretty hard for Hydron Hawk to find a partner. Chemicritter Oxyox is a level 2 wind beast with 0 attack and 2100 defense. When it's tweeted as an effect monster, then during the main phase, you can special summon a Gemini monster from your hand. Don't put that in. And when treated as an effect monster during your main phase, you can special summon a Gemini monster from your hand, and if you do, all Gemini monsters you currently control become that monster's original level until the end of the turn. So if Hydron Hawk was being too subtle, Oxyox drives the message home. By making all the levels match, you'll have the right material you need for an Xyz summon, and unlike Hydron Hawk, you don't have to worry about the levels matching, because Ox just levels them out. Polychemicritter Diox Ogre is a level 8 Dark Fiend monster with 2800 attack and 200 defense, and when treated as an effect monster, the normal summons of your Gemini monsters can't be negated. And once per turn, you can banish a Gemini monster from your grave, then target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. Alright, targeted removal by banishing cards from the grave, and they said Dad wasn't ever coming home. This makes for a great summon off of Oxy Ogre for its amazing attack stat, and that it'll give you access to rank 8 monsters, which we'll be in need of in just a bit. And providing normal summon negation protection is actually quite useful, because it covers one of the biggest weaknesses of the theme. If a Gemini monster is already on the board, using your normal summon to get its effects counts as it actually being normal summoned again. So if anything negates a normal summon, your opponent gets a second chance at it, which Diox Ogre now thankfully prevents, on top of covering when they're normal summoned for the first time. However, it doesn't stop anything like a Bottomless Trap Hole or Torrential Tribute, but your opponent simply won't have them. It's also good to know that 2 Oxes and a Crab makes an Ogre. Very useful for the next time I'm in a chemistry class. Chemicritter High Dragon is a level 8 water dragon with 200 attack and 2800 defense, and when treated as an effect monster, when another Gemini monster is normal summoned, you can make that monster gain 500 attack and defense. And if any number of Gemini monsters you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can destroy another card you control instead, making it kind of like an on-theme Din Girsu, though this only protects from effect destruction. Its big defense stat also makes it one of the better monsters to summon from the grave with Hydron Hawk. Its attack boost effect also can't be understated either, especially for our level 4 and lower monsters, as they'll get the boost on their initial normal summon, then get the boost again when you Geminize them, leading to a permanent 1000 attack and defense boost. At that point, even Hydron Hawk will have decent stats, and things only get better with our bigger monsters. And now we also know that 2 Hawks and an Ox makes a Hydra. We're learning so much today. And their Xyz affinity comes to a head with Chemicritter Draco, a rank 8 Fire Beast Warrior Xyz monster with 3000 attack and defense, requiring 2 level 8 Gemini monsters as material. When this card is Xyz summoned, you can target a Gemini monster in your grave and special summon it. And while this card has Xyz material, monsters your opponent controls can't target Gemini monsters you control for attacks. Also, your opponent can't target Gemini monsters you control with card effects. And when a Gemini monster is normal summoned, you can detach an Xyz material from this card to make your opponent send a card from their hand or field to the grave, their choice. So for a relatively easy summon, you get attack and effect targeting protection for all your Geminis, no matter if they're treated as normal or effect monsters, and then you can incidentally force your opponent to send cards to the grave when you normal summon a Gemini monster. Notably, because of how it's worded, monsters they send to the grave won't trigger any effects that require them to be sent to the grave by a card effect, because technically the effect is making your opponent send the card to the grave, a very silly interaction that shows up from time to time. It's a shame your opponent gets to choose so they can always send their worst card, or even cards that trigger when sent to the grave regardless of the method, but in a simplified game state, this is a great way to limit your opponent's options. Its biggest weakness, however, is that it's not allowed in legit tournament play, since methanol is an alcohol component and they don't really allow alcoholic beverages at events. Alright, that's all the Chemicritter cards, now it's time for the spells and traps. Catalyst Field is a field spell, and each turn, a level 5 or higher Gemini monster you normal summon can be normal summoned without a tribute. And during your main phase, you can normal summon a Gemini monster in addition to your normal summon or set. Also, once per turn, you can target a card your opponent controls, and on resolution, banish a Gemini monster you control that is treated as an effect monster and has its effects until your opponent's end phase, and if you do, destroy the targeted card. So being able to normal summon Diox Ogre without a tribute is fantastic, and having an extra normal summon to Geminize your monsters immediately is also huge, and is really good enough with just that. But you also get some removal as well. You'll have to normal summon the Gemini again once it returns to the field, because being treated as an effect monster doesn't exactly carry over once it leaves the field, but hey, you know, it's an option. Just make sure you clean up all this once you're done. If the lab techs find out you left catalysts all over the field, you're gonna be in for a talking to. Burnout is a normal trap card that banishes a Chemicritter monster you control to special summon 2 Chemicritter monsters from your deck with different names from each other. And when your opponent declares a direct attack, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your grave, then target one of your banished Gemini monsters and special summon it, and if you do, it's treated as an effect monster. So you can turn one of your easy to summon level 2 Chemicritters into 2 level 8s, which can make for an easy Method Draco. And later on, you can get back that banished Chemicritter or any other Gemini that's managed to get banished, maybe by Diox Ogre's effect, and if they survive past your opponent's turn, you don't have to spend a normal summon to get them online. It's a really good piece of support to help get your plays started and keep you in the game longer. But I would advise everyone to make sure you don't lean into it too much. It's called Burnout for a reason after all. Dimmer Synthesis is a normal spell card that has one of 2 effects when activated. You can either add a Catalyst Field from your deck to your hand, excellent since Terraforming is at 1, or add a Burnout and a Chemicritter monster from your deck to your hand. You can also banish this card from the grave, then target 2 face-up monsters you control, including a Gemini monster that's treated as an effect monster, and until the end of the turn, make one of their attacks 0. And if you do, the second monster gains attack equal to the first monster's original attack. This is a massive consistency boost for Chemicritters, searching out just about any piece of the deck you could ever want at any given time, while providing you a way to get over big monsters by consolidating attack power. And if you zero out a Gemini monster with an effect, you can then use them as fodder for Catalyst Field's removal effect, That way you can get some value out of them after they've lost all their fighting spirit. I don't know who made the executive decision to make Chemicritter support in Dawn of Majesty of all places, but whoever it was, I'd just like to say that printing dimmer synthesis was a bright idea. Okay, that's all the Chemicritter cards, but what do we do with them? Well, aggro is the closest thing to a game plan we've got. We can summon big monsters that make big punch, with very few of them having any kind of control effect to bring to the table. We'll also leverage the pool of available Gemini support cards to turbo out material, then use their sundry effects in tandem with Method Draco to overwhelm our opponent so we have them seeing double. But what can we play to help them out? First, I want to focus on the Gemini monsters with effects that are good enough to splash in with us. Blazewing Butterfly is an outstanding example, because once it becomes an effect monster, it can turn into any Gemini with its effects activated, making it the best way to get our higher level Geminis online. This is in contrast to Gemini Soldier, who used to be fairly useful, but needing to go to the battle phase and only summoning level 4s and not giving them their effects is kind of a drag. Besides, if we want something that's good in combat, it's hard not to get better than Heavy Knight of the Flame. It banishes any special summoned monster it attacks, so it's non-targeting, non-destruction removal. Skelosaurus becomes a Goyo Guardian that can get some very impressive reach with the attack boost provided by High Dragon, and while this is mostly in line with the Red Eyes cards, Red Eyes Archfiend of Lightning has the potential to be a massive board wipe. Gemini's Lord Goldenite is also a fantastic inclusion, as it searches any piece of spell and trap support when made into a Gemini monster. Phoenix Gearfried is pretty hit or miss. They're a big monster, and their effect severely punishes your opponent for activating spell cards, and is an admittedly ineffectual spell and trap negate nowadays, but free monsters are free monsters. In fact, the Warrior Strike structure deck this card came out in did a fair bit of work in trying to revitalize Geminis, and they even got a rebuild structure deck like the Monarchs did. Not that we here in the TCG would know since it got chopped up to fill out Toon Chaos, but what are you gonna do? Now, because of that, there's a big focus on equip spells and fire warrior monsters in that set, and while you'll notice absolutely no Chemicritters or warriors, they're still worth looking into. Evocator Chevalier can turn face-up equip spells into removal, and Evique can special summon your Geminis out of the grave. This actually works wonders with Catalyst Field, since the effect triggers on being Geminized. So you can phase it off the field for a bit, pop a card, and when Evique comes back, you can Geminize it again for another summon. And note, this also works the same way with Gemini's Lord Goldenite for more searches. And of course, where equip spells are, Immortal Phoenix Gearfried is sure to follow, with much better protection. But what equip cards work best with Geminis? Well, Gemini Booster is a trap card that equips to Geminis, giving them a bit of an attack boost, and the best part is that if they're destroyed while equipped, you can Geminize a Gemini you control. But the best pick by far is Supervise, an equip spell that Geminizes a monster it's equipped to. And if this face-up card on the field is sent to the grave, you can target a normal monster in your grave and special summon it, which means free Geminis for you. Faster ways to get to our effects is also a huge plus, and that's why we'll want to play a few copies of Dragon's Mirror to summon Super Alloy Beast Raptinus. Being a dragon fusion that requires 2 Gemini monsters means that it's super easy to deploy, especially because Carbo Crab is already sending Geminis to the grave for its own effect. And while it's on the field, all Gemini monsters on the field are treated as effect monsters and gain their effects. This is why some Geminis trigger when special summoned, just in case they hit the field while Raptinus is out, or if they're special summoned by something like Blazewing Butterfly. And in keeping with the spirit of the mighty dragon, there's Super Magic Sword of Raptinus, an equip spell that grants you an additional normal summon, one that can be stacked with the usual extra normal summon effects too, and provides various kinds of protection, which I think are super neat. And before we get too off topic, another Dragon's Mirror target that works really well with us is First of the Dragons. It just takes 2 normal monsters, so, you know, Geminis, and it's a really good wall against effect monsters. It can't be destroyed by battle except with normal monsters, and it's unaffected by any other monster effect. It can still get like lightning stormed or, I don't know, ice dragons prisoned, but it does force them to use non-monster removal to get this off the field, unless they're on a big normal monster like Blue Eyes White Dragon, but that's, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that's very rare. Gemini Ablation is also a hugely useful card. It turns any card in your hand into a fully Geminized Gemini monster right out of your deck. You can also discard a card and tribute a Gemini monster to summon Immortal Phoenix Gearfried. Really, it can be any Fire Warrior, but really it's Immortal Phoenix Gearfried. And if it was a Gemini that had their effect, you can also pop a card. Really, the first effect is where it's at, but if you tech an IPG, you might as well keep it in mind. As for a silly tech pick, give Swing of Memories a shot. Since all your Geminis are treated as normal monsters in the grave, each and every one of them is a viable target. Then you can use your normal summon to Geminize them and gain their effect. Now, normally you'd lose that monster at the end of the turn because of the self-destruct, but that's where Catalyst Field comes in. By banishing that monster once it gets its effect, you can leverage it for removal and it'll come back later without having to worry about the drawback. Or you could just use it as Xyz material, that works too. And that's all I have to say about Chemicritters. There's a ton of other Gemini monsters we could mention, but overall, everything that's been listed here will help you deploy your molecule menagerie to the best of their abilities. Summon a gigantic Xyz monster to dominate the field, then slowly take over by utilizing the massive Gemini support pool to your advantage. It's not going to be winning you any regionals anytime soon, but play your cards right and your opponent will come down with an adverse chemical reaction. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Do you agree that Chemicritters are the Yu-Gi-Oh equivalent of the baking soda volcano, or do you think their molecular bonds are stronger than steel? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to show your support, ring that bell so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Harry, the ominous benefactor, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Howling Zangetsu, Ironic, John Manji, Julius Sneezer, Lorakia, Meteornus, Michael Madsen, Mighty Action X, Muzuki Clark, Neo Trinity, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sophie, apparently, The Fresh Prince of Conair, The Wizard Moose, True Neutral, Xander Wolfensberger and Zyrus, Cosmic Crusaders, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Emily, Eva Padilla, Inblink, Jesus Garcia, KL, Kale the Dragon, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-de-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Nitromo, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777 and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue doing this thanks to the support of these lovely people, so if you'd like to be a part of these credits, as well as help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you want to see another video about an archetype of animals that are made of things that are definitely not animals, check out this video I made covering scraps. And if you want to see two Yu-Gi tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenkinai's latest series, Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.